always let me know and I can clarify. So then we will put them in terms of types, risk factors, diagnosis, and prevention. Generally, that's what one needs to know in general. The rest of the details are with the specific individuals and with the specific doctors. So to just put an introduction, you'll excuse me if I have some percentages missing there, but Kenya has recently started observing a high rise in several types of health-related issues due to lifestyle changes. And this is seen across board in age and gender. Approximately, I think about 40% of cases that visit hospitals, particularly inpatient, are due to lifestyle-related diseases. And these diseases are also often referred to as non-communicable diseases. So if you come across the word non-communicable diseases, you will know that chances are high that the referral or the synonym used is that non-communicable diseases. Although some of them are not lifestyle, but in general, that is the interchangeable word to non-communicable, to lifestyle diseases. These diseases are not just limited to adults, as many of us may have the impression. Even the children are also affected in some of these diseases, as I may mention from time to time. And if I fail to mention, please feel free to remind me. So what are the lifestyle diseases? They are ailments whose occurrence is primarily linked with the day-to-day life habits of an individual. In other words, maybe you are predisposed, but maybe you are not, but generally you have lifestyle of one's lifestyle right from the time of conception to the time of diagnosing the disease. Something may have happened that was avoidable or that was brought about by the lifestyle. Such a lifestyle can further lead to several chronic non-communicable diseases. In other words, one disease can lead to another, and we may want to see some of these. So we want to just mention a few of them, maybe the commonest, not in any particular order, as one may notice that the commonest is not necessarily heart disease, but heart diseases are commonly lifestyle in nature. Obesity is an illness that sometimes is not recognized as one. Type 2 diabetes, as opposed to type 1 diabetes has very little to do with the lifestyle. Maybe managing it will lead lifestyle changes, but type 2 is very much associated with lifestyle. Stroke as a consequence of many factors and more likely to be as a consequence of hypertension or blood-related diseases. Hypertension is one of the commonest, and we will talk about it just a little. Chronic obstructive airway disease or pulmonary disease, which is also largely environmental. Asthma as a disease that many of us may be familiar with, osteoporosis, and cancer. Now, one will ask things like cancer, but we will mention a little later. So all these diseases that I've mentioned and many others that may not be here, I dare say that some infectious diseases are also lifestyle related, and we will probably notice that, or maybe we'll discuss that at a later date, because today we want to talk about non-communicable ones. So some of the communicable diseases could be lifestyle related, but for now, let's go to each one of them and see the risk factors. So heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, if you look at all of them, one of the commonest risk factors is age. Heart disease is more likely to happen as one grows older, and therefore it's not a wonder in some cases that somebody has lived very healthy and ended up with a heart disease. Because also the causes of heart problems, some of them are a consequence of certain behaviors or certain patterns of diseases that are caused by other behaviors. Gender. Heart diseases are more common in men than in female, Low physical activity. Generally, heart diseases is common in people who are lazy. So they are sedentary, they don't do a lot of work because as we'll discuss later, what exercise can help you with. Poor diet. A lot of us have this habit of eating a specific type of food in a high quantity and ignoring another type of food. So poor diet could be sometimes, when it is lack of it, it's sometimes lack of the good ingredients. But sometimes when we can afford it, we go quite a distance or at quite some length to just make ourselves sick by eating excess of certain type of food. Smoking is a danger to heart disease, very much associated so, and very commonly associated in many research and many cases. High blood pressure, which is otherwise, when sustained, is now called hypertension. And then obesity, of course, is another disease that is a factor in causing heart disease. Diabetes is also another disease that is a cause of heart disease, and poor oral health. Then, of course, stress, because stress elicits some hormone reactions, hormone discharge that then causes the heart to operate or pump in an abnormal manner. Type 2 diabetes, there are two types of diabetes commonly, of course 3, but there are two types commonly known, which is type 1 and type 2. This is due to inability of insulin to work or an unavailability of insulin. So insulin is the hormone that ensures that the blood sugar that we have in the body, that is glucose, is taken into the cells and therefore utilized appropriately. Now that hormone insulin, when it is missing, or when the quantities are not enough, or the insulin is available, but it is the areas where it's supposed to work are blocked by maybe fatty tissues, then one can easily develop diabetes. So in type 2, usually the pancreas, which produces the insulin, is capable of producing insulin, but not enough. Alternatively, is that when the pancreas is producing enough, the receptors of the insulin are blocked. So one of the risk factors is age, lack of exercise, being overweight, or if we may use the word obese, following a sedentary life, again, exercise, as I mentioned earlier, drinking a lot of soda. And I must stress here soda, because soda has a lot of sugar. Usually, in the current times that they are trying to reduce the amount of sugar in sodas in the market, but still, in general, soda has a lot of sugar in it. That's why it is sweet. And excessive consumption of sugar is associated with the same soda and also within our foods. And maybe other carbohydrates like ugali, rice, chapati, they generally are easy to digest and convert into sugar. So one may not be taking a lot of sugar, but they're taking a lot of other sources of sugar. Consumption of artificial sweeteners. So you see, when you take a sugar-free diet or soda, you are not necessarily helping yourself when it comes to diabetes. Genetics or having a family member. People who have type 2 diabetes generally have a history within their family. Not clearly linked to any gene, but they have there's a family history that is common to those who have diabetes. And of course, stress again comes in here, because stress changes the way you metabolize your body or the way you consume your nutrients. Obesity comes in again as a disease now, although you notice it's one of the predisposing risk factors of heart disease. It's also a risk factor in type 2 diabetes. And obesity, the main risk factors are age, gender, again, more common in men. As a matter of fact, I think from this you can notice that the weaker sex is men. Low physical activity because you are consuming and not spending. Unhealthy eating habits, again, as we mentioned earlier, family history and genetics, race and ethnicity is more common among the Negroids, or that is the black races, and healthy environment like getting exposed to chemicals. A few have been known to have obesity as a result of exposure to some chemicals within the environment. Stroke is a consequence of inability of the brain to function or brain death. And that can be caused by either clots, blockage of the blood vessel that is supplying that section of the brain, or burst of the blood vessel that is supplying that part of the brain. And if a blood vessel bursts or is blocked, then the part of the brain that is not supplied with blood will die off. And when that dies off, it manifests in weaknesses or inability to perform certain functions in the part of the body that is represented in the brain. So the risk factors in stroke are high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, as I mentioned, blockage of the blood vessels, so high cholesterol can easily cause a blockage. Smoking, having heart rhythm disturbance, especially what we call atrial fibrillation. So when the heart is not beating properly, it ends up with a disturbance of supply to the brain, and sometimes it's not uniformly so. Hypertension is the other one. Hypertension is actually sustained raised blood pressure. I will not define many of these things, but for hypertension, I would mention that a blood pressure of 130/80 is good enough for an adult. Anything beyond that, you now need to start checking and confirming that it is either sustained or it is coming down. If it is sustained, it might require attention, but not necessarily medication. Medication is one of the ways to manage hypertension. So the risk factors are family history, obesity comes in again, age of an individual. It's more, the hypertension tends to be more common in older people, although you can find it in any other age. Race, hypertension again is more common among the blacks compared to the others. Being physically inactive, use of tobacco, consuming excessive salt, particularly sodium. Sodium, the common salt, what we call table salt, common salt. Intake of too little potassium, we will mention that later where you get it. Excessive consumption of alcohol, and certain chronic conditions like sleep problems and kidney diseases. So in hypertension, I may mention here that there are two broadly categorized into primary and secondary. The primary one, all the above except certain chronic diseases and the stress will apply. In other words, you may not pinpoint exactly why it's happening, but it is there and it commonly runs in families. But where there is a cause like a chronic diseases like kidney disease or diabetes, then you can talk about secondary hypertension. Then of course, stress also causes high blood pressure, that when stress is sustained, that high blood pressure will be sustained and therefore you have hypertension. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease is the risk factors are generally passive smoking, working with chemicals, dust and fumes, history of childhood respiratory infections or common childhood respiratory infections, and a genetic condition known as alpha-1 deficiency, which we may not go into deeply so much today. The other diseases, the risk factors for asthma is being overweight, if there's a family history, smoking, having some other allergic conditions like when you have any allergy to what we call atopic dermatitis, then you have a higher risk of developing asthma. Getting exposed to exhaust fumes or other kinds of pollutions. No wonder you'll find children in urban settings who are probably more prone to asthmatic attacks, and exposure to occupational triggers in some cases, in the case of, in some cases, you can be exposed to secondhand smoking. So if you live with a smoker or you are common in the company of smokers, chances are there that you can be affected with the time. Osteoporosis is generally wearing away of the bone. The bone becomes weaker and weaker. It is not as strong. It is not calcified enough. And one of the predisposing factors is vitamin D deficiency. Smoking is a predisposing factor. Having a diet low in calcium, race, Asians and Caucasians are more affected in osteoporosis. I think I need to mention age here because those who are getting older, for the men when the android hormones is getting lower, and for the women when the estrogen hormone is less, then the bone density tends to wear out. Chronic diseases like hepatitis C and rheumatic arthritis. There are some other diseases that will also make it possible. Of course, there is disuse when you do not do a lot of exercise, and therefore, for example, if you are bedridden for long, the bones just tend to wear out, because there is also what we can call the disuse atrophy. In other words, when you don't use something too often, why strengthen it to be a little more? Some cases, it is a problem of absorption of nutrients that you need, and excessive consumption of caffeine or alcohol. Caffeine or alcohol, we must stress there, because a lot of us love coffee like nothing, and tea, and a lot of us also spend a lot of time imbibing alcohol. If you are a young woman and you are losing your menses already, chances are increased that you can get osteoporosis. And of course, there are some hormonal things like hypothyroidism. Thyroid gland is one gland that is in front of the neck, and it is important in a lot of body metabolism together with activity. The last one that we shall look at is cancer. Cancer, some few cancers, you can easily identify the risk factors, and smoking is one of those risk factors that is found across board in almost all cancers. Environmental poisoning has been known, particularly nuclear type of poisoning, like in bombing, when the nuclear bombs are used, then you have mutations. Mutation is the change of shape or change of instructions from the body nucleus to form new cells, and therefore it will form cells that are not the normal, which may end up being cancerous. A good sexual activity there as a risk factor, and this is largely in relation to cancer of the penis and cancer of the cervix, because there is a virus that is easily transmissible through sexual activities. Diagnosis. How do you make diagnosis of most of these cancers? I will talk very broadly, not necessarily going to each one of them. But when you have a heart disease, you will need to do a few workups. One of the things you look at is the blood workup in general. So you first of all look at how the blood picture looks like, because you might need to understand the kind of things that are happening in the body generally. You might also need to do cholesterol levels, and you will also do the checkup things like urine and things like blood sugar, because some of the, as you notice that there is an association between that diseases and the other diseases. So in all these diseases, the general workup is the general blood checkup, which we call full hemogram. You will need to do blood sugars. You will need to do kidney function tests, because in some cases the kidney functions will be there. You will also need to do the cholesterol, and in specific cases, you might need to check the hormones that are in various parts. So for heart specifically, now you'll go to what we call coronary angiogram, where you do a study of the vessels that supply the heart muscles. You might wish to do a CT scan, because you'll see a cross-section of every part of the heart as you wish. You will probably need an MRI as per necessity, and you might need to do echocardiogram. Echocardiogram is the ultrasound of the heart. You might wish to do X-rays in the primary period, because sometimes just by X-ray you can see the size of the heart and the shape of the heart and give you a few clues here and there. And one of the first tests that are commonly done is ECG. This is electric activities of the heart. The heart is generally an electric organ, an electric pump. So the way the electric waves move from one point of the heart to another might give you a clue of which part of the heart is affected and which part of the heart is not functioning well. And of course, sometimes you can do exercise stress tests to just find out how well the heart is functioning under duress. Obesity, one of the biggest things that you do is just conduct a general physical examination. You see the person and look at all the things they have, the shape they are in, and all that. Because there are some people who are also born big, so they are not necessarily fat, they are just big. Reviewing health history like weight history, eating pattern, physical activity, medications, etc., might be useful because some forms of medication might be leading to increased body weight or increased puffiness, or so to speak. Keeping a check on waist circumference, abdominal fat, and visceral fat, you must check on that. Checking body mass index. This is the very primary way of looking at somebody's weight and height ratios. And it is not necessarily the most accurate, but it is the easiest and the most popular and easy to understand as well. Because these are the factors of the fat content and leanness of the muscles is probably a bit more technical to find it in general practice. Checking for other health issues like diabetes is important. As I mentioned earlier, you might need to check other health issues that might be associated with obesity. Type 2 diabetes, specifically, some of the tests you look at is fasting blood sugar, random blood sugar, oral glucose tolerance test, because there are some people whose diabetes level is not, or it's not obvious. So you need to confirm that they are probably borderline or not. Then of course, you might also need to check, there's a blood test that is checked to see whether this blood sugar has been sustainably high for a long period of time. And of course, it's good to do routine checks for tests for diabetes type 2, especially if you are after the age of 40. Stroke. You might wish to do specific tests like carotid ultrasound, which is to check for any thrombosis, or you can call it, you can check for any clots around the blood vessels, especially of the neck. You can check if there is narrowing, especially when there is cholesterol deposit, which we call atherosclerosis. And sometimes because of a narrowing, in the normal structure of the heart, of the blood vessels, you end up not sending enough, you end up not sending enough blood to the brain and ending up with a stroke. You may have to do a CT scan in a stroke. Very often you need to do. And by the way, for most of stroke diagnosis, CT scan may just be more useful than MRI. And MRI is also sometimes indicated, very often indicated, but please don't ignore the CT scan. Things like blood pressure must be checked. You might have to do echo of the heart, because, for example, when the heart gets a clot formed within the chambers of the left side, it is likely to be thrown up into the brain. So yes, you might even find a clot in the brain, but where did this clot come from? So it's important to check for the heart functions as well. And you might need to do the study of the blood vessels of the brain, what we call cerebral angiogram. Hypertension is another disease that is fairly common. And the tests that you do for hypertension are to check largely for anything that has been damaged, because hypertension per se is very difficult to get a test that pins it down. But you will find certain things that have been damaged that either cause hypertension or hypertension has damaged them. So ECG is one of them. You look at the electrical activity of the heart. Lab tests such as urine tests might give you a few indicators, like the kidney may not be functioning very well. It has been kind of damaged. And the cholesterol is important, because cholesterol deposited at the blood vessel, the lining of the blood vessel, will narrow the blood vessels and therefore increase the chance of hypertension. Echocardiogram, again, for the heart is important, because the sustained and long duration of hypertension with the time causes damages to the heart. And you might also do what we call ambulatory monitoring, 24-hour blood pressure monitoring. This is very important, especially for those who come to the clinic and sometimes you find it normal, they go elsewhere to find it high. And it's especially first-time diagnosis again, because even when you come to somebody like me and we've never met before, there is that level of fear that is natural in the body. So you have to kind of acclimatize with somebody before you go back to your normal. And every time you go to a nurse, sometimes they are taking your blood sugar and you are panicking in the process. And that way your blood pressure might also be found high. So this gives a very good indicator of whether your blood pressure is sustained and is always within that point, within that range, or it is as a result of certain situations. Chronic obstructive airway disease, the best diagnosis is by doing chest X-ray. Of course, you'll do all other tests as I mentioned. And then you can do what we call pulmonary function test. I may not go deep into that, because you are just trying to find out if when you breathe in, you take in enough air, and when you breathe out as much as you are supposed to. And then you check whether that flow of air is free or it's meeting some form of resistance. And that is that's the way to diagnose whether there is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Laboratory tests will include the others that I mentioned earlier, full hemogram, checking the blood picture. Some of the time you will find indicators that there is some form of allergy in the bloodstream. The bloodstream will give you a picture of some indicators like a form of allergy. Then of course there is arterial blood gas analysis. When you breathe in and out, how much of that is oxygen in the blood that leaves in the arteries? That is very critical, because the functions of the lungs is to provide more medium of exchange of gas between the environment and the body. So if there is chronic obstruction, you'll find the utilized air is not expelled well enough for the new air to come in and replace. And eventually, within the bloodstream, the air that is there is deficient of oxygen as necessary. You might do a CT scan, which will give you details anatomically within the system or the lungs. For some reason, okay. Then the next one is asthma. Asthma will be having almost similar tests like the chronic obstructive airway disease, but you might also do sputum and what we call provocative testing for exercise and cold-induced asthma. So you test them with some certain chemicals, certain environmental conditions like very cold areas, and see whether the attack comes. Because sometimes the time they are going to the doctor, you might not see much of that. And if you take sputum, you might see some blood cells that are increased in number that indicate there is some form of allergic reaction going on. And of course, you can do an allergic test for them as well. Osteoporosis, the best way to look at them, do a plain X-ray, and the plain X-ray will show you just by looking that that bone is not dense enough. And the other tests that are commonly done is CT scan and MRI, especially for the spine. The MRI will be very, very useful, MRI and CT scan. But the long bones, you are likely to just see it from the X-ray that there is some activity not right there, so that you have a bone density that's very low. In cancer, I've mentioned the hemogram, which applies to all of them. In some cases, particularly early stage, you might look at the microscope and see the cancer cells changing, and that you'll see especially on linings. And the cervical cancer is known for cytology. Histology is when you, for example, take a piece of that mass that you've seen or blood and look at it under the microscope with an expert eye, with specific stainings that will show you or will elicit out the cells that are not right. Of course, you may need to do MRI of the spine and CT scan, because commonly there are other cancer cells that are found there. I will now quickly move to prevention and management. And there is an acronym that you might wish to know or might wish to remember, which is generally, when you look at this slide, you'll see nutrition, exercise, water, sunlight, temperance, air, rest, and trust, trust divine. So the acronym is New Start. The one's colored in red. If you read it downwards, you'll see New Start. And I'll quickly go to nutrition. Proper nutrition is important. We mentioned up there that nutrition sometimes is an issue. So you must remember that proper nutrition is a foundation of good health and recovery. You must have a balanced diet. Balanced diet here is a little carbohydrate, enough proteins, enough vitamins and roughages, and you kind of keep varying them so that you don't eat the same thing over and over again. Even in a low economic situation, we tend to have variety. We just tend to choose to go the easy way rather than the proper way. So in a balanced diet, just try as much as possible not to be eating the same thing over and over again. Sometimes it's also clear in one's mind what very clearly, but it is very important to know that when you keep varying them, then you are likely to be meeting certain nutrients that you need. For example, when we talk about carbohydrates, we have ugali, rice, chapati, all those are in carbohydrate form, largely carbohydrates. They may contain some vitamins here. When we talk of proteins, we are talking about beans, lentils, dengu. We are talking about beef, mutton, and such, fish, and the chicken. Those, I don't know the content of reptiles, but I think they also have some proteins. Soon, I'm sure it will be a delicacy in some of our tables. Then, of course, when you look at vitamins, you're talking about vegetables and fruits in general. The fruits, don't bother yourself with being too particular, because fruits are generally seasonal. So if you can afford it, if the fruit that is in season is the one that you take more and you mix with a few others. And the requirements of vitamins are usually not so much at any one given time, but the lack of it can be very severe once in a while. The quantity is important. For example, when you're dealing with the diabetes, we are dealing with obesity, you're dealing with high blood pressure, the quantity of anything must be regulated. Frequency is important because some people have these eating habits that they eat the time they find the food, whether cold or warm, but it's good to have your body acclimatized to a specific frequency. Because when you eat, for example, past midnight, you don't find the food enjoyable because your body is not prepared for it. When you starve for too long, you end up having a few side effects here of hunger, and you might have some pain, gastritis, and the rest. So it's good to have a good pattern and a good frequency. So there's common in our environment, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Ideally, although we hardly do it, ideally the breakfast should be the heaviest, because even if you take a lot of carbohydrates, you are going to spend it most of the time, most of the day. And then lunch can be a little light because if you take heavy one, you'll sleep in the afternoon and you still have work to do. And the dinner should be relatively lower because when you go to bed, you are generally resting the activities of your body. And if you do not utilize what you've spent, what you've taken in, you will end up storing most of it, creating a situation of obesity and diabetes and high blood pressure, and of course, giving a chance for cancer cells to grow, because cancer cells also thrive better where they are shielded from the general circulation by the fats. Avoid snacking in between. Some of us have a habit of chewing. Even now as we speak, I can guess that somebody who's currently chewing something in their mouth. Some people like biscuits and sodas all the time. You notice we mentioned soda there, and one of the commonest sources of snack is soda. So past midnight eating can be very dangerous to you because sometimes acidity and the difficulty in sleeping, and then when you wake up in the morning, you have a lot of waste to discharge. So it's good to also eat early enough and eat good food. Exercise. Exercise action is a law of life. If you are just sedentary, you're just there, just moving. Even the good book says that if you do not work, you should not be eating. So many of us have this habit of not exercising at all. And your muscle tones cannot be strengthened, and muscles are important in terms of when the muscle tone is good, even the blood pumping within the body is better. So blood circulation is better and the flow of blood is easier. You do not strain the heart and you do not strain the return of the blood to the heart either. And of course, you utilize most of the energy, so you avoid obesity, you avoid diabetes. But exercise improves the health of the body, mind, and spirit. Therefore, the types of exercise that we would advise is one of them is walking at least 3 kilometers in 30 minutes every day, if possible. You try to make some few kilometers per day. And if you can be doing jogging or running. And where you can afford and you also have the time, you can go to the gym. And the gym is important, yes, but it's not the only way to exercise, as opposed to many of us thinking about exercise and the gym. Not too many of us can afford the gym, and not too many of us, even when we can afford, have the time to go to the gym. So we comfortably pay per month, but we hardly use it. However, it's advisable that you use the gym as much as possible. The important thing about the gym, sometimes you have instructors who are trained to try and help you exercise appropriately to reduce certain ailments and also reduce certain accumulation of fat, and some of us don't like them in certain areas. And of course, in general, you will be gaining better health. And in the gym, it is fairly well regulated, so that if you have a certain weakness in certain areas of your health, you might be assisted to do a specific type of exercise. Water is very important. The 70% of the body is water, and it's estimated that actually the brain is 90%. When somebody tells you when kichwa maji, it's not quite an abuse, it's a praise that your head has more water than you can imagine. Keeping well hydrated, therefore, is important, and you must take a certain amount per day. The other thing about water is water is important in the environmental cleanliness of your body. In other words, your external part of the body needs to be fairly clean. The other use of water, of course, is in hydrotherapy. It is used to sometimes combined with massage. It helps a lot of circulation and both muscle toning. And in a few cases, hydrotherapy has been used even to manage fever and sweat a lot of, and sweat a lot of toxins within the body. When you hear of detox, one of the ways of detoxifying is actually to do water hydrotherapy. But for consumption, the quantity one should take is an average of 2 liters per day, depending on your level of activity. If you are generally not too active, 2 liters a day is enough. If the level of activity is higher, therefore you pass more urine and you sweat more, then you need to take a little more. This idea of taking water to a point that we are almost carrying a jerry can is not necessarily fashionable. Taking water is not supposed to be fashionable. It's supposed to be health managing. So whether we see you taking water or not, just remember the quantities you are supposed to take per day. How you take it is important, because a lot of us take about 1 glass of water before a meal or after a meal, and every meal, and we can be taking 1 glass, and within about a short time we pass all of it to the urine, which means it has not quite spent enough time to pick out some toxins to pass in urine and in sweat. Therefore, it's important to take water generally continuously in a sip. So you might be taking half a liter in about 1 hour continuously. So there are periods of time when you're not taking anything. And then, of course, you must remember that the other fluids also count. So don't take your 2 liters and not take your tea, or don't take 2 liters of your tea and not take your water. Continue taking water as you take your other fluids like juices and the rest. The other important thing in our life, which we do not sometimes appreciate, especially when we come from the tropics, is the sunlight. Sunshine is very important. To bask once in a while, stay in the near the window, and you know that the sun is established energy source. As they say in physics, you can neither create nor destroy energy. You can only transform it into another form. The truth of the matter is sunshine seems to be the major source of energy in all forms of energy. So when you take a bit of sunshine, you just don't get energized, but you also metabolize better, because your temperatures needs to be at a certain level so that you get to digest better and to manage your body better. And some vitamins like vitamin D is synthesized within the skin and the liver, and it is accelerated or catalyzed by the presence of sunshine. Now, this does not mean, particularly those of us who are in the tropics, that you go sit in the sun for so long, probably being lazy. It's important, yes, to bask in the sun once in a while. But the important thing here is that when you are, for example, constructing a building or your house or wherever office you are, you must allow enough room for light to come in, because that light comes in with a lot of energy from the sun. Even though you are not directly facing the sun, the benefits of the sun may be coming through your window. Some of these dark houses we live in high floods like Kayole and the Pipeline, are a danger to our health in terms of sunshine. The next thing that you need to do is temperance. You remember when I mentioned in food, I mentioned that you need to have a certain level and not too much. You need to be moderate in everything that you do, whether it's your temper, the way you react, your excitement. You need to moderate yourself very well. So using good things moderately and avoiding bad things is obviously wise. So in temperance, you use good things moderately and you avoid bad things as much as possible. So all those risk factors like smoking, alcohol, you avoid them as much as possible. And the good things like ugali and soda and such like things, you take them only to the extent that is necessary. One of the ways I'll tell you about eating to the quantity, the quantity that is good, is that when you're chewing food, do not eat, when you're eating rather, do not eat in a hurry. Chew your food to an extent that it is semi-liquid before you swallow. And that means that you, for something like ugali or beef, you take approximately 1 minute before you swallow. It has two effects. One effect is that digestion will be much better, but the second effect is that from the time you start eating to the time you end eating, the quantity you take depends on how fast you are. So the longer you take, the lower the quantity. The faster you eat, the higher the quantity you will take. So you can even regulate your levels of eating by being temperate. And of course, a lot of anger also sometimes hurts you, because anger increases heart rate, it increases high blood pressure, it increases the release of sugar, it increases all your body functions. And if that is sustained for a long time, that's why you saw stress appearing in a lot of those diseases. If that is sustained for a long time, you end up with those diseases. Air. Air is another very important thing in New Start. Now we are at air. The body's most essential source is air. If you lack oxygen for approximately 5 minutes, you are dead. Any part of your body lacking oxygen for about that long, you are probably dead. It's possible to stay longer, but some parts of the body is even shorter. So you need to have fresh air that has enough oxygen. Oxygen or air is actually more important than food and water, but it's not that they are not as necessary. It's just that air, without air, those two may be useless. So you need to have a time to breathe well, and you need to breathe proper, pure air. That means the best way to do that is keep your environment clean, have a few trees around you, so that the air that is there is purified by nature. And the best place to find good air is out in the garden, and sometimes near the river. So when you have really little time, some time to walk around, you are better off near a river, because the air there has been shown to be highest level of oxygen, just in case you didn't know. Now, in our buildings and in our houses, we need to provide for good circulation of air, because there's a lot of pollution that is happening where we live. There's a lot of pollution that is happening when we are in a closed environment, and the oxygen we breathe, as we breathe, we don't just breathe in oxygen only, we breathe all other gases that are around us. So the percentage of oxygen needs to be high. So the best way is to have a good circulation, good windows, good doors, as you construct offices and you construct your homes. The next thing I want to mention is good rest. Resting is very important. Let me tell you one thing. If you are too busy you are wondering what to start with, take a little rest. And when you come back, you will find you're able to decide what you want to do, and you're able to do it better. Working continuously that I must finish this, it's not necessarily a way to go. Reading too hard is not necessarily a way to pass an exam. But resting restores you and gives you more energy. The best rest that is known is when you fall asleep. And sleep needs to be good, and a good number of hours. So you need to sleep approximately 7 hours a day. You need to sleep in good time, not past midnight. Many of us here will tell you the experience that when they sleep past midnight, when they wake up in the morning, there's a difference in energy levels. You feel like it was not enough. Even if you sleep until midday again, you find that it's not enough. So you need to sleep approximately 7 hours. You need to sleep good. This idea of sleeping with the radio on, TV on, or the phone around you sometimes disturbs your sleep, and you don't gain that much sleep. And it's important to also prepare yourself for the sleep. So physical exhaustion, a peaceful mind, will give you a very good rest. If by any chance your mind is a bit disturbed and you have a physical exhaustion, you are likely to achieve some form of sleep. So it's good to take a rest and sleep. It's good sometimes to also just watch something and not be doing anything. You're just resting. If you have a garden, you can just be looking at leaves the way nature is, and you're not thinking of anything hard in terms of substance. You are resting your mind. So it's good to have time off to rest. Those of us who don't take leave, please be taking leave once in a while, go and rest. No wonder it is mandatory that you must take some leave. Those of us who think holidays are expensive, spare some time, save a little. All the tourists you see coming here, very few of them are rich enough back at home. They just save to ensure that there is a time they go out to have some rest and change of environment. Last but not least, and very critical, is each one of us, atheists, Muslims, Christians, whichever religion, have some divine power at the back of their mind that they rely on. So trust in divine power. and you will almost always have good physical health. When your spiritual health is good, your physical health will be good. Trust in divine plus power is a gift leading to right choices. So even as we were talking of the choices that we make in our life, we will be probably making them because we are conscious and we are free of other burdens. I want to leave it there. I'm sorry I've taken almost all the time. So I don't know how we will handle the questions. I can see a few of them have been posted here. Do I go ahead, Justus, to handle them?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. Caroline Nafula is asking, as you grow older, is there a specific lifestyle you should adopt, especially on diet? Yes, as you grow older, you can make better choices. So you may have to be reducing your carbohydrate levels because your energy levels are also, energy requirements are a bit lower. You can be increasing your proteins, vitamins, and roughages so that you have feeling of satisfaction, but enough of everything. But not too particular, but yes, as you grow older, you should be eating less. It almost happens naturally. And again, avoid certain foods like too much fats. Irene Gidenji, with regard to BP, ideal being 130/80, is it an issue if the bottom reading is consistently over 80? Yes, it is an issue if the bottom reading is consistently over 80. Actually, the cutoff point when you should start getting worried is when the lower reading is consistently over 85, especially if you are a young person below 40, because there is a general increase in the blood pressure as you grow older. So Irene, if you are older than 40, 127/83 isn't such a bad idea. But always also confirm that these pressures that you are taking are right, because if you are taking it by yourself, you can go to a professional, and if you are going to a specific professional, you can once in a while just change to confirm. Take a good rest before taking the blood pressure, because eventually the best blood pressure is when you are at your normal without having had it. There is an anonymous attendee who asks, what is the cause of lactose intolerance in adulthood? I may have to avoid this one, but lactose intolerance is a form of reaction, so to speak, so a form of allergy. Lactose is another form of sugar as opposed to glucose, usually found in milk. And it is that their body cells recognize it as not so good and therefore react to it. So it's not quite known why, but it is possible that it was overexposure of the same, or overexposure of something that then causes you to react to lactose. I had a mild stroke in 2019. That's another anonymous attendee. Cause was hypertension. Condition was well controlled. I'm taking hypertension drugs and sodium valproate. My question is, for how long should sodium be taken? I have taken for more than 2 years. Another doctor was telling me the sodium, or maybe I should move it down. The sodium might no longer be necessary. This question cannot be answered in general. You might have to consult the doctor specifically and do some tests and look at your history in general, and therefore make a decision based on where you are right now. Another anonymous attendee says, is it advisable to take water immediately after a meal? It's really a matter of debate, but nothing too bad about it, only that don't take too much of it. It's good to take just a little sip, because sometimes you need to rinse your mouth as well. So you just take a little and take a little while, some rest before you take more. The true habit of what we have, yes, is that we almost always take it after meal. So even when we are advised to take it a little later, it sometimes doesn't make too much sense, but it is not advisable. Some schools of thought say that it should not be so. Another anonymous attendee, I guess it's a few of them that asked severally, which type of doctor should one seek for hypertension, and what is your opinion on keto diet? Completely eliminating carbs. Now, the type of doctor you should see, eventually you might need to see a cardiologist. That's the expert in hypertension. Let me leave it at that, because the other factors that make you not see a cardiologist are more than, some of them are not within your control. Some of them is within, they are not within reach. Sometimes you didn't know, so whoever you have met is the one that is already managing you, and if you are doing well, you are feeling well. But within your lifetime, you should really see a cardiologist. It's a physician cardiologist that you should be able to see. Completely eliminating carbs, nothing wrong with completely eliminating carbs. It can actually be healthy. You can rest assured that all the food you eat, most of it have some level of carbs. Vegetables have some level of carbs. Fruits have some level of carbs. And proteins, when there is a shortage of carbs, proteins and fats, they will be converted into carbohydrates. So there's nothing really wrong with taking a carbohydrate-free diet. If it's working well with you and your energy levels are good, you are good to go. Daniel Munyiri, what is the difference between heart failure and angina? Heart failure is a case where the heart cannot pump blood enough to supply all the organs of the body, especially the vital organs. It is not pumping and reaching that area in good enough pressure. So, for example, you'll see a swelling of the feet because the heart is failing, so it doesn't pump enough for it to go back quick enough to come back to the heart. So when the heart fails to do that, angina, however, is a sharp pain on the left side of the chest coming from the heart, arising from the fact that some heart muscles are dying because of lack of supply of blood. That is what angina is. Teresia Irungu, session very informative. Thank you. Thank you, Teresia. Caroline Nafula again, as aging especially starts at what age? Aging starts from conception. I don't know what that question really means, but I would imagine that as you grow, there are certain categories. There is infancy, there is childhood, there is what you can call a young person, which is about 25, 19, 25 and thereabout. But they say life begins at 40. So literally, therefore, certain changes body starts around 40, which you might interpret to mean aging. Is milk of importance to adults? Very important, yes, David. Milk is important because milk has proteins, it has vitamins, it has calcium, and many others, and it has plenty of water. So milk is important to adults. At least I'm sure cow milk is still important to adults. What I know is that adults may not take breast milk from female adults. Can poor diet affect your vision? Yes, poor diet can affect your vision. Some vitamins are necessary in proper vision. Diabetes, when you have diabetes and your diet is not good, you are losing your vision quicker. When you have hypertension and your diet is not good enough, good for hypertension, you are losing your sight quicker. So yes, diet is important in vision. Evelyn Okeo, thank you so much for the session. Evelyn Okeo, again, what is your take on intermittent fasting as a means of losing weight? Fairly debatable, but yes, it works. Intermittent fasting works for a lot of people, but it is not quite a subject that you can easily give a fast answer. So my opinion is yes, you need some expert advice on how to do intermittent fasting so that you can use it in a proper manner. How do we balance, Robert Langat, how do we balance sugar intake? Is there a recommended ratio? What is the main difference between diabetes type 1 and type 2? Why are kids affected with lifestyle disease? And how do we mitigate this? Thanks. Okay. This is fairly long, so what I will do, I will divide it. Diabetes type 1 is where there is lack of very little availability of insulin. So you might not be able to control it using stimulating drugs to keep the body producing more insulin. Type 2 diabetes, however, so very often the insulin is in good quantities, but not enough. Or if it is in good quantity or in good quantities, but the receptors are not working well. So you might manage type 2 sometimes. You might manage type 2 without any medication, without any drugs. But type 1, we might almost always need drugs. Why are kids affected with lifestyle diseases? Kids are affected with lifestyle diseases in several ways. One is genetics. The other one is the behavior of the mother during pregnancy. The other one is other diseases, like it is believed type 1, very often there is a destruction of the pancreas, which produces the insulin. So if a child has the pancreas destroyed either genetically or by infection or something like that, they will end up with things like diabetes. There are very few cases, but they are there, of children with things like hypertension, things like cancer, they are there. So children are affected just like every other person, maybe less often. And there are some cancers, for example, that are more common in children than adults, in fact, exclusively in children. So children, being human, are prone to be affected. Another anonymous attendee: can allergies, dust and cold in children lead to asthma in the long run? How can we treat it early? Allergies, dust and cold may not lead to asthma, but we may be dealing with one and the same disease. When we are talking about dust and colds and asthma, we probably are speaking about one disease, maybe just dust and cold creating a conducive situation for asthma attack to happen. But we might be talking about one disease. Caroline Imonje, talk about alcohol, please. Is a glass of wine daily okay? There are some of us who advocate no alcohol at all, but it is known that everything, however good, if taken in large quantities, is dangerous. So wine, those who have done deeper studies have realized that wine effect on health is not necessarily the alcoholic content, but the specific ingredients, particularly of grapes, that are useful in the management of in some form of vitamin that is useful for the heart. So it is not necessarily true, and a glass of wine might depend on how big the glass is, if you know what I mean. Caroline Nafla, you must have been very attentive. The session very informative. Thank you. You crowned it with the proverbs. Thank you. Anonymous attendee, thank you for your response, Doc. Caroline, again, I mean old age. Nafula, I answered you, so that's fine. Fantas, Kamau, what is the connection between diabetes medication and sexual activity? Does it affect sex drive? The most likely thing is that the disease itself is of one affecting self-drive. So the better you manage diabetes, the better your sex drive. Can you talk about kidney functions, kidney infections? Kidney infections are likely to occur when you have certain diseases that also reduce your ability to defend yourself, that it reduces immunity. So diabetes, people with a stroke, because of inactivity, can have a lot of infections. People with cancer, because of the cancer or because of medication, may easily get infections. So that is the association. So infection as a result of a weakened body that may not be able to defend itself. What causes high blood pressure during pregnancy? A lot of things, and I might not go into that deeply, but there are, I will just crown it and say hormonal changes. Sometimes some of those hormones are produced by the placenta, and that could be the rationale for certain specific types of high blood pressure in pregnancy. Mike Kinywa, this was a very informative session. Good morning from Nakuru. Anonymous attended. This should have been a 2-hour session, a very informative and nice presentation. Thanks, Doc. Thank you also. Anonymous also said, do leads like those used in credit cards cause cancer? I will be honest on this one. I actually don't know. I have no evidence, therefore I will not be able to comment. Elizabeth Achola, thanks for this informative presentation. I'm glad I tuned in. Thank you. May God bless all of you, and thanks for attending. Back to you, Justus.
Thank you, Doc. I know it's a session that cannot end. Of course, it's a very informative session. I saw a hand up from Madan Joroge. I don't know if she's there. Maybe she dropped the hand. Of course, Doc, there are many questions that are coming up, but we'll be able to as well share more to you so that we can be able to get the answers and also share with our clients who are asked the same questions. So at this session and time, thank you for the presentation, and I'll give this to Lorna.
Thank you. Thank you, Justus. Thank you, team. Thank you to everybody who has tuned in. Thank you to our host, that is Dr. Ambrose Nyangao. It is a whole, the way one of us has said, it should take a whole day, a whole 2 hours to just going through the lifestyle, to go through the lifestyle and all it is. So we all know all this, we've been taken through, and we all know that promotive health, prevention health is key. And Doc has really taken us through all that. So thank you so much, Daktari, the whole team, because all over in the whole world, in Kenya, research also proves that most of the leading mortalities, it is all coming from lifestyle diseases, the NCDs, which are really causing a high mortality. So before I go on, I'm told there is one person who have raised her hand. I think that is Florence. Maybe Florence, you could be having a burning question that we all need to hear. So I'll give you this chance before I just conclude. Welcome, Florence. If you can hear me. Okay. Anybody else who? Okay, let me just conclude. I hope you'll maybe put your question through so that we forward the same to Daktari. If it is something you needed to ask or a clarification or even an input. So Doctor, maybe we've listened to you. Maybe you can just tell us how we can also get you where you are located and the profession, so that the team in the house can also just get to know exactly who is Dr. Ambrose and where you are exactly.
Thank you. I am located at Better Living Hospital, which is right opposite Integrity Center. I think Integrity Center is a fairly popular building now. I think I need to also stop sharing and show some face a little. I am a family medicine practitioner, and you are free to ask any of the questions. And I have to add that this presentation was in such a rush. Somebody was right, it should have been minimum 2 hours, but ideally 1 full day. And thank you for attending. Thank you for the feedback as well.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you, team. That is very deep. So for any question, if you want to get more, you can share your question to our CDM email that will be able to forward to Daktari so that he's able to respond to all these questions. So as a take-home note, as a take-home thing, just ensure all prevention methods, all prevention ways keep them, the exercise, the nutrition, it is key. I think, sometimes we had our champions on the pesetas, whereby we could stand in the office, we go walking with that app. I would maybe request our champions to just continue so that we all move together, because actually the exercise is key, nutrition is key. So if you can assist a friend to assist another one in that pushing, so it will be good for all of us as a company, as our clients, and as the whole fraternity. So on behalf of APA, the care team, on behalf of the CDM, on behalf of our management, that is the whole of APA management, who have also allowed us to have this session ongoing. We want to say a big thank you. We have to say a big thank you to Daktari, to all those who've joined, and also to all that was willing to join but they couldn't. So thank you and have a lovely day.
Thank you and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.